We're going to do the panel to conclude our day, y'all. I've got some awesome guests up here. Some are more awesome than others, right, Toby? You know what I'm talking about? So I'm going to make some introductions. We're going to do some fun question and answer. You know how panels go. We're going to tailor this to the EP side of the world a little bit more than we did throughout today. We'll, of course, talk some more about the insider risk issues. But, you know, again, at the heart of this, really getting into the threat management considerations. So I'm going to start off with our panel. You all know who I am now, Nudie Beans. So we got that established. If you want to hear that story, just find me after this. But that was, in fact, my nickname in the U.S. Air Force. But I'm joined by Jameson Ritter. I'm joined by Randy McAllister. A new face joining us for the evening is Caleb Gilbert. Good to have you here, brother. And Toby Deaton, not to be confused with Tobias. That's just his full name. He really loves being called Tobias, so we all call him Toby. Jameson Ritter, accomplished security operational leader with more than 25 years of experience across the public and private sectors. Some of you may not know this, but Jameson is a Kentucky colonel. Salute, sir. For those of you that know, you know. Jameson specializes in BTAM, as many of you all saw, in security operations, crisis management, physical security, and a whole bunch of other things. I'm going to save you all the time, okay? He wrote me a book for his bio here, so I'm just, we're trying to be efficient. Jameson has the triple crown through ASIS, CPP, PCI, and the PSP. One of the few to have that. He's also a certified threat manager through the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. Rarefied air there. And we appreciate you being here, brother. It's a joy to have you on the team, too, man. Love being able to work with you. Randy, same as you. Seasoned leader in emergency services, threat assessment, organizational safety with more than 3 decades of experience spanning emergency management, law enforcement, crisis response, and security program development. His career includes EMT, paramedic, police work, culminating in senior public safety leadership overseeing investigations and threat management and key roles in SWAT operations, criminal investigations, and larger community safety initiatives. As CEO of Crisis Consulting International, he now works with a lot of faith-based organizations to do hostage negotiations for people detained abroad and doing risk management for a lot of faith-based organizations sending people on missions abroad. Randy is also a CTM and has a deep background in threat management, also has the National Threat and Evaluation and Reporting certification through DHS for behavioral threat assessment and management as well. Good to have you here, brother. Caleb Gilbert. Does anybody here know Caleb already? All right, you guys are in for a treat. Glad we have you here, my friend. Caleb is the president of White Glove Protection, a highly experienced executive protection professional, more than 2 decades of operational work across 51 countries in nearly every region of the United States as well. His career is spanning building programs, leading executive protection teams from the ground up, serving in several director roles for Fortune 200 companies, private family offices, and providing close protection for A-list celebrities, ultra-high net worth individuals, major corporate principals, and so on. Known for treating executive protection as a disciplined lifestyle rather than a job, Caleb has developed a deep expertise across the full spectrum of protection and protective intelligence. He's an active leader in the executive protection community, serves on the ASIS International Executive Protection Community Board, as well as the International Executive Protection Community Board, correct? Am I saying that right? International Protective Security Board. Yeah. My bad, brother.
2 separate organizations.
Words are hard, man. Forgive me, okay? All right. Caleb later pursued several academic credentials as well. Has a graduate degree from Johns Hopkins, as well as a master's, that is the master's, and an undergrad from Stanford, all in EP-related stuff, right? Very good. And a lot of operational depth there, man. Thanks so much for being here. Really looking forward to you speaking to the EP side of these things. And then, of course, we get to Mr. Tobias Deaton. Toby is a protective intelligence leader himself, EP professional, for American Financial. Has more than 2 decades of experience himself and is part of the U.S. intelligence community in his background, as well as the United States military. SEER specialist, right, Toby? Anything you'd like to say about that? Just curious. Okay, all right. As a senior security manager, he directs a comprehensive portfolio for threat intelligence analysis, travel security, EP, and situational awareness training, risk assessments, digital risk mitigation for American Financial. Known for his mindset and dedication to proactivity and converged security, Toby strengthens enterprise resilience through strategic planning, expert instruction, and cross-functional collaboration. Love you, brother. Toby is also big into jujitsu, so if you want to try things on this evening, see how far you can make it, he's your guy. Has a Master of Arts in Integrative Studies and National Security through Northern Kentucky University. Glad to have you here, brother. Very good to see you. Toby and I go way back, if you can't already tell. Love having you back in town, brother. Let's get into our first round. So we're going to do some primary questions, then we're going to do a couple of rifle rounds, then we'll conclude this thing, have the rest of the night for cocktails and conversation. Jameson, first question to you, brother. How am I doing on sound? You guys want me to come away a little bit more? All right. What do the next several years look like for BTAM, particularly as insider risk management programs become increasingly mainstream?
I think this group here especially will hear a lot of common themes. For me, the there's an inevitable move at this point to put BTAM and insider risk, insider threat kind of under the same umbrella, or at least functionally putting them together, because as we talked about all throughout our day today, there's so much that we do in separate buckets that I think can be realigned. And I think, again, I'm just forward leaning on this. I think that in 5 years, you'll start seeing more and more, at least mainstream programs that are finding a way to combine those two in a more formal way rather than the informal, hey, this might be IT related, let's call our folks on the other side of the fence and ask them if they can help us with this, as opposed to an integrated team where workplace violence and violence prevention is one wedge, like that big circular thing you saw a bunch today, where we're all working on what are our people doing, what is the behavior happening, and how we can anticipate risk early. And then as that progression of risk changes to insider risk, insider threat, espionage, whatever it is, then we bring the appropriate people to the table if they're not already there. And if it turns out to be a workplace violence related issue or threats related issue, we already have the team there. So a lot of it's going to involve finding a way to merge those two worlds, both information, and information sharing, but also training. So we get BTAM folks that understand our insider risk and cyber better. But again, not my strength, but in 5 years, I might have to learn a lot more about what they do. And conversely, I think our cyber and insider risk friends are going to learn a whole lot more about behavior and how that progression from grievance on to eventual action. I think we're all going to start speaking the same language. So,
love it. Good stuff, brother. And you guys have other stuff to chime in, of course, feel free. Next one is for Caleb. What's a common thing executives misunderstand about being the focus of a potential threat, and how can protectors address the issue?
I'd say the answer to this question is probably changed in the last 18 months to 2 years. The average executive, by and large across America, has thought, well, it happened to them, but it wouldn't happen to me. Well, all of a sudden, we have a progressive series of violent attacks against executives that a lot of our protectees, a lot of our bosses know. It became personal. The cadence of those attacks has increased at a rate that we haven't seen in modern history, making that relevance to them more relevant personally. I like to say that it took a pair of security-minded glasses, and it brought the risks to them personally in focus. They knew that security was out there. They knew the risks that associated being in leadership positions were out there, but they didn't necessarily have it in their focus, right? It wasn't the priority. Security might be a remit. It might be a cost basis. It might be something in the organization, but they didn't need to focus on it before. Now that's changed. I've had more CEOs call me in the last year than I've had in the last 25 years and say, I can't take my kids to school without being scared, right? They never used to admit that. Today, it is absolutely front and center in people's minds, and that is a significant change from what we've seen in the past.
Can I add something to that as well? Is this
Please.
on? Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And even just in ours, our executives, it is more of a concern for them right now, but it's still a little bit of that's out there kind of. We have a lower profile. We're trying to get them to understand that they are part of the critical infrastructure of the organization, and think about all the safeguards you have for critical infrastructure at your organization, right? Your IT systems, all these systems, access control, right? We put a lot of money and resources into it, and they often think that, yes, they're making key decisions, but they're not necessarily critical infrastructure. And if we can get them to start thinking about that, we're having some small victories. And like, it's not just about you, boss. Like, it's about, shareholders, value, leadership. As I think, Jake, you showed earlier the stock value of United Healthcare and went just plummeted. I mean, like,
yeah.
so that is a huge shift in the mindset that we're trying. So if you have any pointers, send them my way afterwards.
I think the big pointer on that is they have the visibility now. What we do with that visibility is key, right? Because if we overemphasize their risks or the impact to the organization should something happen to them, then we're going to lose them. If we underemphasize it, then you lose the opportunity to gain traction through the momentum that's been built, right? So really taking and having an objective lens to take a look at it from security-minded glasses, but say, all right, this is the actual risk. We're going to dissect this down. Let's incrementally move this forward. We identify the risk. We take that risk that's been identified, and then we come up with a plan that will mitigate those risks that are most likely to occur, and then let's develop a progression from then, right? We don't have to do everything at once, but if we take and develop that plan, you're leaps and bounds ahead from hundreds and hundreds of corporations that post Brian Thompson have gone through and had an IRS 132 assessment done as their first step, and they're still trying to get programs started because they haven't known where to start. They haven't known what steps to take. And if we simply start in the ASIS, we just came out with the Executive Protection Standard. It is a simple step-by-step framework to start out with. Literally just starting with that can take and put your organization into a position to where if there is an appetite to match the risk, you have a plan, and then that's what gives you the traction. That's what gets you the buy-in. But more importantly, your competence develops the confidence of the people that we're entrusted to protect, and that's super important in this game.
Good stuff. Love it. Randy, let's look at this from a global perspective. What role does a threat management team play when an executive is traveling abroad and a threat is made against them or identified?
Yeah, so they can become really a force multiplier for the EP team. They can become, I think, a good role for them is acting as sort of a single coordinating sort of entity, if you will. All the information flows from what they're seeing on the field, back to headquarters, to the government over there, or even our U.S. government if you're dealing with, RSOs and state departments and things like that. So I think coordinating is really key. And I think the other thing is they can help translate a threat into a country's, into country-specific protective decisions. In researching that, depending on the size of your teams, both your ET or EP team and your threat management team, maybe they even sort of take the role of gathering intelligence for wherever your executive's traveling, and certainly liaising with other threat assessment professionals, because there are quite a few out there in other countries. We have a European Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. There's an Africa one, Asia, and now Latin America. So, and honestly, in my career with the Bureau working cases, it's the networking that helps you manage cases. And, I was able to dial up a complete stranger. Actually, I had a case in Europe, a stalking case, and I was able to leverage my relationships through ATAB to find somebody who could help this person in Switzerland manage her case of being stalked. And so, your threat management team back home can kind of take that kind of stuff and run with it, so to speak.
Good stuff. Thanks, man. Toby, with your company specifically, how is your company intertwining or not threat management insider risk and executive protection? What's currently effective and what needs some work?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me. Appreciate everybody letting me join this panel of studs up here. Second, you have no idea how uncomfortable it is to be a SEER guy and have another SEER guy behind you.
No doubt. Zero trust.
If I hear duct tape, like I'm running. Anyway, and that first or second slide that Jake put up there about the segmentation and the silos is still something that we have. People continue to view, like I said earlier, a situation through their lens, their particular set of experiences. So trying to get people to look at not threat assessment here, insider risk here, executive protection here. Yes, there are areas of specialization and there are people that have expertise in those, but I'm trying to get people to view them as capabilities within a system, right? Like an ecosystem, right? Where we can leverage those things based off of what is the situation? Who do we reach out to? These are all capabilities. And I think that stems from, when we were in the military, Willie, Jake, and myself, we were part of the Guardian Angel weapon system. Sounds really neat, but it was just resources that you could tap into, right? All people had kind of a part of that. I think where we're having success, corporate security in particular, is we kind of touch all three of these areas: executive protection, insider risk, threat management, maybe a little bit more than some of the others, right? HR has a role, but not much in executive protection, at least in our entity or our organization. Legal has some stuff going on, but we kind of touch all these. And I think something that's been really helpful, and it sounds super cliche, relationship building. And going to those other stakeholders and going to, for instance, IT and cyber and saying, given a certain scenario, how are you guys looking at this? What are you looking at? How are you trying to figure out the problem? What skill sets do you have? What resources do you bring to bear? How can I help you? It's really just sitting down, understanding their capabilities and what they're looking at, because they're looking at it totally different than I am, right? So I'd say in the past 6 to 8 months, we really put a lot of work into the insider risk initiative, and we're having a lot of those conversations. And I feel like it's been incumbent upon us in security to start reaching out and having those conversations, just getting to know them a little bit, right? And it's not even us saying, well, here's what we can do for you. It's tell me how you're looking at this so I can understand that. That way, if I get, we get a concern, I can say, I'm thinking of IT, I'm thinking of cyber, I'm thinking of HR, because I know now what they're looking at and I know what resources they can bring to bear. And that takes intentionality, right? Everybody in here, I guarantee you, is very, very busy, right? Show me a hand is not super busy. It takes intentionality to say, this isn't really a meeting that I have to have, but I want to have that. I want to go to coffee with this person. I want to reach out and just have maybe a quarterly alignment meeting for 20, 30 minutes to just sort of check in and see how they're doing and build that relationship.
Related to that, it's actually tying into our next question. Some organizations, when you have software that is specific to a function, sometimes that can facilitate silos, but yet we also have a lot of progression in software that helps facilitate programs such as we're talking today, and maybe, if done well, can help bring down some of those barriers. Jameson, software being increasingly centric to BTAM, increasingly centric to facilitating insider risk management plans. How can teams go through that synchronization process? How can they synchronize their efforts when some of these different departments are using different systems?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start with the obvious. It's a big challenge. I mean, we haven't even mastered BTAM software in most organizations. Most of the time, even in very mature programs, they're using legacy systems. They're using ethics and compliance software. They're using spreadsheets. And we've even seen spreadsheets in very large corporations. And of course, for us to be able to do our job, we have to talk about where we're seeing our threats. We have to talk about data. We have to talk about trends. I spent 3 years at United Health Group. Brian Thompson was an executive sponsor of mine for a bunch of money we had to spend on something years earlier than all the tragedy. But I learned a ton at United Health Group, which is just because you're a Fortune 5 means you probably hadn't figured it out either. Whether it was like a mom and pop shop in a lot of ways. We're using legacy software. We're using stuff that wasn't built to capture behavioral data, weapons data, just all the things. Because every question I needed to answer had something like, well, how many gun-related incidents have we had across the globe in the last 12 months? Oh, I have no idea. I've literally had to go in, create a spreadsheet and manually search things that just mention the word gun or firearm and then come up with like 12. Well, that's not the right answer. And if you have to do that kind of work to figure out where your problems are, same way in COVID, when we shut down all the public facing stuff, our domestic violence rates spiked. We were doing 60, 70% of our cases domestic violence related because everyone was at home. It's not that the other stuff wasn't important, it's just they were not public facing anymore. So when I go to the CSO and I say we need to invest more time in things related to domestic violence, they said, you got to prove that to me. Well, I can't even prove that in my own system. I know it anecdotally from our team and what we're seeing. But if I can't prove that that's the problem, so we got a lot of cleaning up to do in our own house when it comes to software. And I love, now that I've been out of that role and in multiple different roles since then, software's come a long way. There's purpose-built software for what we do. And maybe to get to more your point of your question is, at some point, this ties into the first question, which is how are we aligning all of these historically separate things, insider risk, IT, workplace violence, EP, and bring it under a central thing? I think that's going to require a reimagining of software and information sharing in some way. As we start realigning programs, we need to realign software that allows us to collect that data and to share it internally in a way that makes sense. Right now, IT is going to have their stuff, cyber is going to have their stuff, EP may have their stuff, and if we are getting there at some point, BTAM should all have dedicated stuff. Somehow we're going to have to bring all that together and figure out how to talk. I think AI is going to help. Again, obviously, this crowd has heard me talk about it ad nauseum today. Allowing some of these systems to share information more naturally, more automatically, so that when things come up and you're looking at a person of interest in the cyber world and I'm looking at a person of interest in the behavioral world, and EP has a potential issue with a protectee and maybe some threatening language, that something can tie all those systems together and automatic that notify when we're dealing with the same thing in different ways.
Love it. Good stuff, man. And, for some organizations, not having the answer is okay, but at least knowing the conversation to have can even be a good starting point, right? Yeah, that's good. I love that. Caleb, let's bounce back to you, brother. What are the core pillars of an EP program, executive protection program, and how do folks get started if they're a little bit strapped for manpower, budget? What's your recommendation?
Well, first and foremost, if you're an ASIS member, the EP standard is free. It's 51 pages of bullet points. Each bullet point could be its own book. So that, as far as progression, as far as what should be where in what part of the process, it's all there and it's listed. Realistically, if you're going to run a truly risk-based program, you have to start with risk. Do the IRS 132. Regardless how many executives you're looking at, depending on where your budget is, get some sort of comprehensive security assessment done. Whether it's IRS 132 compliant or not, depends on your organization, how large you are, and your individual specifications. But you look at the content that's covered during that assessment. That's what we use as the foundation for the program, right? What is the most salient priority to your executive right now? That's step number one, right? It might be that they just happen to be a normal human being that drives back and forth to work. So statistically speaking, the assessment identifies that the most dangerous thing they do during the day is drive from home to the office. So be real, identify that to them and say, this is the most dangerous thing you're doing right now. If that risk level changes, we'll make a recommendation. But for now, either identify that risk, accept it, or get a driver who's trained to be able to keep you safer than you can keep yourself, right? Also, the value proposition. Allow them to understand that if your commute is 45 minutes in the morning, if you let us drive you to work, then we are taking 45 minutes to work, 45 minutes home, and we're investing that back in your day. So you're able to focus on your family, the organization. And when I was at PayPal, I actually took this to my CSO. I did all the math. I broke it down exactly what because I was going for a promotion. And I broke down exactly what my team did over the course of 3.5 years and broke it down and just blew his mind as far as the numbers with the publicly available information on the CEO's salary, the number of time that we actually saved them through frictionless logistics and things like that. That is a language that they can understand. They don't understand guards, guns, and gates, right? They don't understand security things, but they do understand data. They do understand numbers. And if we can say that we're bringing shareholder value by driving you to work, then that will resonate better than, hey, I think you need a driver because it's not safe, right? So take one step at a time. Develop a long-term plan, but take baby steps. Don't try to go too big too fast. Because oftentimes when I've seen programs fail, they have not failed because it wasn't, good content or good intent or good people. It was because they tried to go in a direction that was too fast, too soon, and not in line with the expectations of the protectee. One of the Silicon Valley founders that I had the privilege of starting a program for started and said, Caleb, I like you, but your guys scare the heck out of everybody everywhere they go in Palo Alto. Like, can we do something different, right? These are people with real risks, state-sponsored level risks. Like, they needed people around them. And if I had told them, hey, no, you need XYZ, you need what's there, then they probably would have transitioned me out and replaced me with somebody new, right? But instead of taking that, I said, all right, we need to take and revisit this. We need to take a look at their risks, identify what we can identify first as a risk. Let's focus on those. And then incrementally over the course of 3 years, we were able to build a program for them that was customized for our team specifically. We were all full-time employees of the family office at the time. And we were able to build that program out. But instead of encumbering them with a bunch of knuckle draggers, we were able to facilitate their lifestyle, their Silicon Valley lifestyle, without impeding their ability to stay safe.
It's good stuff. Let's do a couple quick ones here, and then we'll move into the fire rounds. Toby, looking at the employee populace in this case, how can we get buy-in from our people when we are trying to implement an insider risk program, say, without them feeling like it's pointed at them, without them feeling like they're the focus?
Yeah. You don't want to make it seem like a surveillance state, right? You don't want to make it seem like we're watching you. We expect or assume that you're going to do something bad. So we all have all these, safeguards in place, right? It's kind of human nature. It's when I travel a lot and when I leave, I tell my young boys, I could say, you guys better behave. I'm keeping an eye on you. Mom's going to tell me, if you're misbehaving. Or I can say, it makes me feel a lot better when I leave and I know you guys are taking care of mom and you're being responsible around the house. I can see the look in their eye, right? It's human nature. So I think one of the things we do is we make the employees part of the process. We entrust them, right? Because they have a vested interest in the success of the company, right? There are going to be some bad apples, obviously, or else we wouldn't all be employed here. But for the most part, most people are there because they like it there. Maybe they're getting paid well, or they like the reputation of the company, or whatever it is, right? They feel value, and most of them want that, right? So they have a vested interest. So if you kind of partner with them and say, all right, we're all part of the process here, that's going to get you a lot. There was a FBI, DSAC, anybody familiar with DSAC, Domestic Security Alliance Council? Last month, they published benchmarking results from a survey that was an insider risk survey. Had 2 questions. Does your company have a program, and do you tell your employees about it? I was shocked by how many, the vast majority of companies don't tell their employees anything about the program, or if they do, it's extremely minimal. And my thought is, in the absence of information, they're going to come up with something, right? It doesn't mean you have to explain all of the sources and methods and things that you're doing there, right? Because there are some things that we don't necessarily want them to know, but we want them to know that we have a program and that they are a part of it, and how do they tap into that, right? We have a very successful program. It's us in conjunction with our cybersecurity folks. It's called Protect Us, Protect You, and it's basically like things that are good for you are good for us as a company. And just a physical security example, if I challenge somebody on piggybacking, now I've helped protect just that time and space right there. But I've made it safer for my colleagues. If everybody does that, my colleagues have made it safer for me, right? So it works both ways there. So we kind of have baked in our insider risk program into this Protect Us, Protect You situation. So we're getting good feedback there.
One thing I'd really like to say real quick on insider risk, like when you're engineering your insider risk program, engineer it as if you've caught somebody. I don't know if that makes sense, but how many people here have faced true situations in their organization? I can tell you it changes your perspective on insider risk when you are looking at an organization and you know that person and that person are insider risk, right? So if you're engineering your program and you're coordinating with everybody, reverse engineer it based on the anomalies. Everybody has a baseline in the room, like with behavior, right? Reverse engineer it with the knowledge that the insider, there are anomalies, they are there, and then post-incident, those anomalies, in my experience, are obvious, right? You are able to see those post-incident. So all we need to do is focus on those anomalies pre-incident, and you're able to have greater levels of success. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It's good stuff. No, thank you. One last one for you, Randy. Back to the threat management aspects of this. So a lot of us in this room are security types, protective intelligence types, got a couple HR and things of the like. But, you know, if we're trying to campaign this message, if we're trying to get cross-functional buy-in, what would be like the one thing you would want to say, or the biggest thing you'd like HR folks to know, or legal folks to know, or, you know, maybe even IT or something, but some of those counterparts that aren't inside of this day to day?
Could I pass? You're asking
got
the
it.
cop to
Moving
talk
on.
about lawyers, so I could go on.
Next
all day.
question. Here we go.
So no, I love them all. You know, I think that, and this is pretty simple, but especially for legal department and HR, because you can get a lot of pushback. They want to hold their information close to the vest and not share it. You know, lots of silos there, especially when you're talking about BTAM programs. But having BTAM is, first off, a duty of care at this point. There's you know, emerging case law just in the last decade that says we need to have this as sort of a basic function of our employment, of our corporation, whatever. There's a concept called foreseeability, which is a legal concept. But as these, you know, acts of targeted violence become more prevalent and we study them, we know they're detectable and therefore preventable. And so BTAM helps you address that foreseeability, but it's also a standard of care now too. And I think we need to, you know, if we can convince them this is a standard of care, and I always go back to liability because that usually gets the attention for legal and HR, but it's a standard of care. You can't afford to ignore it. And we need to find ways to work cross-functionally across all those silos that are in our offices so we can keep people safe. So pretty
Right on.
simple.
Thanks, brother. Any quick questions from the crowd? Follow-up questions or things y'all want to address before we hit the last couple of rounds here? We'll have another opportunity, but. Okay. Very good. Lightning round, y'all. Quick one. So each panelist is going to fill in the blank with one sentence, one word, or one phrase. You okay?
Yeah, I talk too much. So when you say one word or one phrase, I'm like, crap.
Had you in mind for this.
Yeah, no, this was designed for Ritter. I got it. Thanks. Excellent.
All right. So the first one is keep. Second one will be start. Last one will be stop. First one, keep. For each of you guys, starting with Jameson. Let's hold it together here, brother. Okay, ready? One practice that consistently improves decision-making effectiveness under stress.
Training.
Randy.
That was mine. Training. But not just training.
You're
good,
already breaking the rules, brother. Come
good
on, what
training.
are you doing?
Really?
It was one sentence or phrase. You're like 3 sentences deep.
Well, you're right. Yeah, but good training, I think, is key. Yeah.
Good training.
Mr. Gilbert.
cross-functional after actions.
Love it.
Take a mad minute. Does everybody know what that means? Do you want to explain that to them? A mad minute?
Please.
Just breathe, relax.
You're breaking the rules.
If they don't know
Go
what it
ahead.
is.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to break the rules. Yeah, just breathe, relax, think about the information you have, and make a decision. And you encompass that with the phrase, a mad minute.
Love it. All right, this one is start. One small operational habit that would meaningfully reduce insider risk next quarter. Toby, starting with you.
Implement principle of least privilege.
Say that again.
The principle
For
of
the
least
crowd?
privilege, least access privilege. You guys should remember that because one of these guys mentioned it.
Caleb, what you got, brother?
Start identifying anomalies.
Randy.
Okay, a little twist on, but least privilege, like start a least privileges Friday, where managers once a week take 15 minutes to review privileges for all their people and keep them as low as you need to.
Jameson.
Back to basics. Do basic security well every time.
That's good. Nice, guys. All right, last one is stop. One common behavior or policy that undermines personnel or executive security? Let's start with Jameson. Back this way.
Oversharing personal information online.
Oversharing personal information online. I'm serious. I had the same thing.
That's why we work so well together.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. That's all we have. Caleb, go ahead.
Stop following history.
Toby.
Stop assuming. Stop assuming there's no risk, assuming people have the latest information, assuming somebody did the thing.
Love it. All right, so the last one is a 30-second scenario snap. Just one quick answer for one quick scenario. You guys ready? Randy, are you nervous? We okay?
Go first.
I don't know.
Okay, all right. Toby, we'll start with you. A long-tenured engineer accesses restricted files outside of their role. Recent grievance about compensation. Peers report behavior changes. What triage steps clarify risk and route the case?
Determine if this access was intentional, accidental, is it repeated? What types of information? Is the information similar? I want to know, does that access correlate with the timing of the grievance, when the grievance was issued? How was that grievance issued? Was this me going to my boss, the appropriate channel, and saying, I don't like how I'm getting paid, I think I get more? Or is this me grumbling to all the employees saying, this place sucks, I'm underpaid? The behavior change, was it a drift over time or was it sudden? I want to drill down on those particular issues. And then once I have that, I can start routing it to the appropriate teams and then start to adjust our posture. And then we know our gaps, what next questions to ask.
Love it. Caleb, any thoughts on this one?
I'll pass.
Randy.
That was pretty complete, actually. I agree. Going back and tracking behavioral changes that people have noticed, along with the timing of all that, and opening up your investigation to see if there's more data that you need or more information that people have they haven't shared. So,
Jameson.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much aligned with all this. I'd say I just want, anytime I get a report like this, I want to know what's the backstory. I want to know, what have they done? What is their history? What's their discipline? That's the first question. Tell me more about all the stuff before, because that lets me know, okay, I've got a real significant problem. If this just popped up or if this is ongoing, all that has meaning. And I want you to set the context so I can start from a good start.
Love it. Good stuff. My friends in the audience, any closing questions or things you'd like to ask of the panel about anything today? What do we got? Yeah, go ahead.
If you were to recommend a publication, podcast, any sort of media to someone who is new to this area, what would it be?
So they're both.
That's Josh King. Everybody give him a round of applause. Bless your heart, Josh.
Such a neutral party.
So the question is, if there's a podcast or some sort of informational resource.
Yeah, informational resource to someone who is new to this realm. That's a school you got pretty quick.
Gents?
I have one. Obviously, CPPS has been doing a lot of good, and that's shameless plug. I don't know. They do have good stuff, and we've repurposed some of their stuff.
I'll get you your check after we're done.
I appreciate that. Okay. Just another old fashioned will do. A source that I really like is Factal. Factal is a breaking intelligence vendor out there, and they do like weekly benchmarker, and they send it out, and it's got links to podcasts. It covers insider risks, executive protection, corporate security. I mean, all the topics that we're covering here, they basically take everything that's out there and bring it into one spot. So for me, instead of me having to go, I used to have to go search all the, I'd had like Google alerts coming up and, like trying to find it myself. And they started putting this out maybe a year or two ago. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. There's a lot of stuff that I glean from that particular thing. You don't have to be super technical.
The ASIS Executive Protection Community on LinkedIn, as well as on Connects. Anybody can join the Executive Protection Community that's an ASIS member. basically there's webinars that are coming out on a consistent basis. There's industry chatter, events, things like that. International Protective Security Board, IPSB, is also it's the world's largest executive protection specific organization. We have the Close Protection Conference every year, but we have regional symposiums throughout the world. So this year we're going to be in Bogota, 6 different countries around the world with day-long symposiums, all focused on executive protection, protective intelligence, and throughout the world. So both of those sites, there's podcasts and regular webinars from both those organizations on a consistent basis.
I would add ATAP membership, because you can attend any chapter meetings virtually, as many as you want during the year, and each chapter meeting is essentially a presentation from somebody on something related to these fields. And so that's, you have to pay for the membership, but the virtual meetings are free. And again, you can attend anyone in the country. There's 13 chapters. So that's great. I would also add, Gavin DeBecker's got a video series basically on the gift of fear. What is it called? It's like the executive series or something like that. But you can find it, I think, for free online, where he breaks down the book by chapter, and it's a pretty good conversation. So, The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker.
Jameson, anything?
I love that book, by the way. I'd say I'd kind of double down. I'll do shameless plugs for ATAP all day. And for those folks who aren't members, you can join some of these virtual sessions for free without being a member. Technically, you can do 2 a year. I don't think anyone's tracking. Don't tell them I said that. That requires that software we were talking about earlier to track all this stuff. Look, they want people there. It's truly an organization that's trying to make a difference and change the world by preventing violence. Most of us are not going to get wrapped around the axle about somebody attending 3 or 4 a year. Honestly, the idea is if you're there once or twice, you're going to understand the value, and it's not a lot of money. There's so much resources, and then once you're a member, the internal dialogue that happens is very, very good. I had mentioned earlier in side discussion that when I was heavy into the threat assessment case stuff when I was at United Health, we had really high-risk cases around the country. I could get on our internal social media network and say, I need a resource in Phoenix for a very high risk. And within 2 seconds, I've got the grandfathers and grandmothers of ATAP, talk to Detective so-and-so. They have a program. Back when nobody had a program in the public sector, we have a prosecutor that prosecutes threat case. That doesn't happen everywhere, but they were able to point me. And because you're already part of the secret society, if you will, there's no worry about reaching out or commercial interests or conflicts. It's like, I'm here to help you solve a problem. That is worth $$80 membership fee in my mind, and all the other stuff. So you can do it on LinkedIn, you can do it on all these different sources too. But I tell you what, it's one of the greatest networks I've ever been part of. I'm proud that we were part of the board at one point, because I think it's a smaller group, but it's a more energized, impactful, and all the people in it are stakeholders in their organizations at different levels. They're not all just case manager types. They do a lot of different things. They wear a lot of hats. Great resource. So I'm just stealing his and adding more, which is what I do.
You did better.
And if you're just looking for podcasts too, probably one of the best ones I've seen, at least for issues specifically that we've talked about today. Are you familiar with Ontic?
Yep.
Yeah. So Ontic has the Protective Intelligence podcast. Ontic is a software provider, and they have a lot of the heavy hitters in this industry that are guests on that podcast. So whether they're talking about protective intelligence or threat management, insider risk, a lot of the pioneers of this industry oftentimes will be guests on there, so that can get you started to see who to follow and who to keep up with. And then for more general security issues, ASIS has a couple as well. I'm sure you can track them down on their website. I usually see them come across my LinkedIn feed. But that's probably one of the better ones I've seen in terms of guests and content that's focused on stuff we're talking about today. You bet. What else we got? Any other questions?
Everyone just wants a beer, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, hey, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to this. We did this for the first time back in October, and I'm always just kind of a little bit stunned for who wants to fly into Spokane, Washington. Most don't even know it's on the map. Reminds me of my hometown in upstate New York a little bit. But so thankful y'all came. So appreciative that we're able to have this conversation together. It's my sincere hope that you're walking away with some value, that you're taking some actionable steps. And that's the conversation we want to be able to continue having with you all and promote these kinds of things in the industry. There's a lot of people out there hurting. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand what to do. There's a lot of people that feel unsafe and vulnerable. And we are blessed with the charge to be able to do something about it. And so that's part of the focus of these conversations, and we want to be able to do it well. So just want to thank you for joining us. Stay around for a couple drinks. We'd love to say thank you more with the beverages. And if you are flying home tonight or tomorrow, safe travels home, smooth travels home. I look forward to seeing y'all at events around the country and maybe around the globe, who even knows. But love bumping elbows with y'all, and have a good evening. Thanks so much.